Hello and welcome to the Movers and Shakers podcast. My name is Gino Barbaro, co-founder of Jake and Gino, multifamily investor, educator, father, and mentor. Today on the show, we have Monica Lorenzo. She started her journey to investing 20 years ago in real estate sales, but wanted more out of the industry in her professional career. After working in property, asset, and project management for several iconic buildings, such as the one in Hanson Place, she turned to real estate investing in 2011. Monica is now a partner in over 1,300 rental units valued at over $16 million. Welcome to the show, Monica.
Hey, Gino, how's it going?
I am doing good. Let's jump right in here. Let's talk about your story. I wouldn't say special or rare, but you're an uncommon investor. You don't even live in the United States and you're investing in the US. So let's talk about your background, how you got into real estate, and why multifamily.
Okay, well, yeah, as you mentioned, I did start in real estate over 20 years ago in New York City, which is a tough town in and of itself. But I mean, going quickly, I graduated college in June of 2001. And then 3 months later, September 11th happened. So corporate hiring, especially in New York City, was kind of at a standstill. And I found myself kind of falling into real estate. Hadn't planned on it. But I took an agent position like we typically do in a real estate franchise. And mind you, I came from an immigrant, middle-class family. And I worked all through high school and college, but I had no sales experience. So I ended up joining the team of the number one person there. Got some experience, eventually became her manager, and later helped her open up her own office. But I realized I wanted more than that. So I ended up taking an assistant property manager position at an 8-building gated community. And it was a condo conversion project. So I ended up handling the leasing of 300 units and then eventually turning and selling 109 units in 18 months, which was like a master's degree in property management and sales. And then from one of those, from that deal, I kind of went with one of the sponsors to that Williamsburg Savings Bank building in Brooklyn and worked on that. And from them taking it from mostly commercial offices to high-end residential lofts. And that was like a master's in construction management. And from there went on to, director of leasing and marketing. And then 2008 happened. So that was like the great reset, right? And while I actually didn't lose my job, I ended up just getting burned out because those of us that stayed basically and kept our jobs just had to pick up the work from the people that were no longer there. So much to the disbelief and disdain of my family and friends, I decided to quit and travel until I figured things out. I think quite a few people end up doing that. But I ended up in South America. And in typical romantic movie fashion, I met my husband, got married, and had my kids. However, I was kind of still feeling the real estate bug. It's what I knew also. And so by that time, the US market was starting to pick up again and stabilize. So we decided to start buying some condos in Florida and fixing and flipping some and keeping others, in our portfolio. And all this from Buenos Aires, which is where we were living at the time. And, fast forward 20 years later, almost to the date, October 2021. And I decided, as most people do, that if I wanted to scale, I would need to transition to multifamily. And even though I had amassed like all of this real estate experience and even quite a bit of real estate in those 20 years, I was still nervous and scared to go on it on my own. And probably because I had been out of the game for a while. And I think a lot of moms maybe who take their kids early years off go through that. But also because from what I was now seeing, reading, and hearing, the playing field had changed. And it seemed that everyone knew more than me, or so I thought at least. So I started searching for different mentorship programs, and I stumbled on Jake and Gino through a conversation with Tim Lyons, which is a funny story, but nevertheless, I joined the tribe. We sold some of the units, and which I appreciated nicely, and started to invest in LPs just to kind of see how this all worked, which I highly recommend people do, by the way.
Let's go back, but let's go back to
Yeah.
when you were down in Buenos Aires and you tell your family that I'm going to start investing overseas in the US. What was their reaction when you told them that?
I mean, as any like immigrant parent would do, it was like, how are you going to do that? It's like, we don't even live here. And, and there was a learning curve for sure, but so I had been in real estate and I ended up just saying, okay, well, I'll get my broker's license in Florida. I still had it from New York. And, I revalidated it there and I started to network and I started to reach out to, different contractors and start to build a sort of Rolodex of of people that I could rely on, going through the bumps and bruises that you do with trying somebody new. But I built up a good team that I could then roll out and the turns would get done in 3 weeks by the end. I mean, every once in a while I'm tempted to do one. I did one earlier last year, and it was just kind of like, well, it's 3 weeks. I'll turn it real quick. And so I ended up doing a quick flip.
So what's amazing is if you hadn't done that, you wouldn't have had the capital to invest today. So it's one of those things where sometimes we want to listen to our parents, and sometimes we need to listen to people who are actually done it. Because my parents are the very same thing. I had 200 units before I told my mom I was investing with Jay, because she couldn't fathom investing outside the market. So it's one of those things where if you're really passionate about it, and if you've got some type of skill and you've got some type of education, don't ask people who have never done it before. Go out and ask the people who have done it. And when you're saying October of 2021, what was the pain point? Why did you want to start investing in multifamily in 2021 in the United States?
Well, again, I don't know if it's by some way, shape, or form, I started to get more information about multifamily, in my circle. And I realized, because I wasn't living in the US and I didn't have my sort of a US tax return with a W-2 job, I didn't really have the ability to get the leverage. So I had these units, which I had bought for, between, $75,000 and $150,000 that were now worth $300,000, and I couldn't take the equity out because I didn't have, the balance sheet for it, right? They wouldn't loan me because it wasn't a personal property. So that was one of the big deciding factors. It was like, I'm just, I went through all the hoops and I didn't want to take hard money on it. So I just said, all right, let me sell them and roll it into to multifamily, which was sort of what catapulted it, which was great in hindsight.
And when you were going through this, what were your limiting beliefs before, embarking on this journey?
Well, I mean, being far away was obviously a major, sort of challenge in the beginning. I had to buckle down and have, some conversations with my husband about a shift, in our internal structure for the most part. And this is probably one of the biggest challenges was after going to some events, right, and meeting people. Like one of them was envy. Right. And I would go and I would network and I would meet mostly men of all ages. And you'd hear about how they were doing this deal and they were going to go to 10 conferences that year and meeting great contacts. And I listened to podcasts who were guys on the show and they were these lean, mean deal machines. Right. And I was wondering how they did it. And then I realized, one, because they were hyper focused and time agile. Right. Especially if they're young with no kids, or even if they have a W-2, they can still pack in 6 hours in the evening of like market analysis and underwriting time. And if they do have kids, let's be honest. I mean, they have their wives to handle family matters now. And that's just the honest truth. And in my case, I'm married with kids and I'm the wife, right? So I have to handle school supplies, book report help, extracurricular activities, play dates, food shopping, meals, laundry, housekeeping. And I know there's some guys out there that help with these things. But if we're being honest, and they can be honest with themselves too, most don't, or at least not the bulk of it, right? Mm-hmm. So first, thank your wives today if you're listening to this show, because they do things. It's a very short list, what I said, compared to all the things they handle you probably don't know about. And second, if there is a woman in this field, right, appreciate that she may have one other job, even a W-2, and a second full-time, 24-hour, no days off, other job of being a wife and mother. So basically, it's like trying to play baseball with one hand tied behind your back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it took me a while to figure this out, right? That I was going to have to lean into this, get more organized. Otherwise, I wasn't going to make it, right?
And that's what I wanted to ask you. How did you do that, though? I mean, because you are going to conferences. I saw you at MM5 back in November, getting on the plane. You have the kids. How are you able to delegate the time necessary to be successful in the business? Because it is underwriting. It is coming to the markets. It is coming to the events. It is talking to the brokers. It is talking to investors, family members. What did you do? Did you time block? Did you put specific time? What were the actions that you took to say, I'm going to crush that limiting belief? Because there are other women out there who are doing it in the space. What did you specifically do to help yourself?
Well, the first thing was a candid conversation at home, because let's face it, I live in South America and there is a definite, a different approach also here. So it was a candid conversation with my husband, which was, I need help and I need you to cover me when I travel. And then I did have to time block and I did have to get hyper organized and I did have to meal plan, you know what I mean? To have to go to the supermarket once in a week and not 3 times because I forgot something, right? Or, and it was just and it was talking to my kids too, right? Because they needed to understand, and because I want to raise them understanding what hard work is, right? And I think it's kind of almost a lost work ethic that we have in this next generation. And so understanding that, mommy's doing Zooms at 10 o'clock at night because we have a 3-hour time difference with, Central Time, and that's when the Zoom is. And, I did everything I had to do, and now Daddy's going to put you to bed. And so it's being okay with those things, and with understanding that them seeing you work is also education, right? It's also teaching them a way to do things and a way to overcome challenges and to get somewhere. So
This is a tough question. I'm not sure how to ask this question, but what did you think you knew about real estate before joining? And then what did you say? Well, that was wrong. A lot of us have these misconceptions of, wow, high cap rates are really great. Let's say, for instance, because I'm getting, lower property, I'm getting more cash flow. Well, in hindsight, that may or may not be true. A lot of times that isn't true. Did you have any of those beliefs saying, wow, this is what I thought it was, but in reality, that's not what it is?
well, I think there's a lot of things that I probably either didn't remember or wasn't involved in that capacity within the business. But the numbers wasn't my strong point. I was always more on the asset management side, and I was always more on the the marketing side and the leasing side. And what I've found is that I needed to work hard on the numbers, and I needed to lean in. And I grabbed Mike Tarabella, and I was like, I don't understand, Mike. I don't get it. I was like, I don't get cap rates. Say it again. So and so that was one of the things. I mean, it wasn't just on a general real estate level, but I just needed to lean in on certain things. And then one of the other things was within, the space too, there's no one way to do things, but it's really important to be partnered with the people who know how to do them. And I think that was probably one of the things that I didn't realize how important the partnerships would be in this, and the people and the networking, and that would lead to the deals.
Oh, that's a great point. And for everybody out there, Monica, also most people don't understand cap rates. We still don't understand cap rates because it's just one of those things that what is a cap rate? And people say to themselves, it's an important metric, but at the end of the day, at this point, if you're buying properties based on a cap rate, great, but you're trying to reposition the property and get up to a certain cap so you can decompress it. I'm not going to go into it in the whole argument here, but I think it's funny that you say that the cap rates are like the holy grail of multifamily real estate.
It's
so
like
you
quantum
get in there,
physics. It's so
and
it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, does not matter. It's levered. I mean, it's just like oh my, it can drive you nuts. But when you get into it, that was the important thing. I mean, for those people out there, I think multifamily is a team sport, and I think people don't understand that. And if you're going it alone and you start scaling up, it's going to be a big problem because all of a sudden you're starting to scale. There's so many different hats you need to wear, whether you're talking to investors, whether you're underwriting deals, whether you're property managing the property, whether you're asset managing the property. There's so many things. How did you end up selecting the partners from the group? I mean, let's talk about picking partners. You're from abroad, so it's not like you could just jump in a car and go take a look at a property. You really had to vet these partners and even vet the deals. What did you do on that end?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I've had quite a few conversations with people who are, just starting in the space, and they're like, yeah, because I think I'm going to buy a 35 unit and I'm going to run it, and then I'm going to have another one. I was looking at a 50, and they want to quickly jump, like you said, they want to scale, and they really have. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this, right? So whether you're actually asset managing, or you're raising the capital on these deals, or you're even property management, or there's just the underwriting aspect, there's the KP and signing on the deal. There's a lot of moving parts, and you've got to find people that sort of play well together. And I think by far that happened through the boot camps, right? So there were other events, but the boot camps within the community were super kind of hyper focused, and they were smaller groups, and they were opportunities to meet people over and over again, 3 or 4 times during the course of the year, break bread, really get a sense of what people were working on. And that really is what led to the deals coming together. I mean, it was purely through networking and finding people with, complementary strengths, in other aspects where you weren't strongest, was probably by and large the reason why, the deals that I'm in happened.
Mm-hmm. And what's your family say now that you're in these deals? They maybe say to themselves, How did you pull that off? I mean, I'm living in the States. I can't invest in real estate, and you're in a different country, in a different hemisphere or different time zones. And how did you make that work?
Well, now they're calling me, right? So now it's like, well, what can I get into, and how do I do it? And what I mean, just tell me where to put it. You know what I mean? Like, just tell me where to put the money. And and that's it's great. It's great for that to happen. It's great for them to come around. But it took time, right? It took like educating myself for these 18 months and really understanding again who to partner with. I mean, people they're trying to trusting you, right, with their money and their earnings, and so it's really important not to fail them by not getting the education, by not understanding the numbers. I mean, I've had deals that come across my plate, whether it's to capital raise, and I had to hunker down and look at the numbers and say, you know what, this is great, but this is not what they're looking for. I mean, this will, yes, you are going to have the appreciation play at the end, but you're looking for cash flow during the course of the 5 years. Like, you can't take this deal, you can't jump on this. So it's important to, to again get educated, understand what you're talking about, and then they'll come. And honestly, I mean, again, having that trajectory for 20 years didn't make me have necessarily like the imposter syndrome that some other people maybe go through because they're coming from a different, line of business, or maybe some of those other things. And people sort of always had me as a real estate reference, but there's still a lot of responsibility that comes with it.
Mm-hmm. So, Monica, you're saying that it's really important to network. Whether you're joining a mentorship or not, you need to get out there and meet other people in the market. How did you select the markets that you're investing in? Was it from the partnerships, or was it like, hey, I like this market, let me go look at the partners in this market?
It was a combination of both. In one case, I'm in a market that I hadn't planned on being, but I really liked the partner, and he was strong and good boots on the ground in that area, and lots of energy, looking to hustle. So, I delved into something that I wasn't planning on, and it's turned out great. And then in the other cases, I took a lot of what you said and started to analyze, and, it just sort of lent itself to being the Sun Belt, right? Because of the tenant, landlord friendly state situation, which we find in a lot of those states. And then, honing in was based on the partners that I met that I felt could really do well in those markets, right? Because again, on the capital raising side, which has been where my focus has shifted now to, it's really about building the relationship with partners that you can, again, rely on, because it's my face at the end of the day. Like, you're capital raising and they're only going to come to you. And I have people who are, Spanish speakers, obviously. So that's also another issue. They're investing from down here in the US. They're scared. It's another country. They don't know the language. They don't know the laws. And so they rely on me. So if I put them into a deal with partners that don't really have a handle on the situation, especially in this economic climate, right? I mean, honestly, like, for the past 10 years, I mean, you could have done everything wrong and still, like, you rode the upswing with that graph going up and to the right for the past 10 years, and you got by. But it's going to be a different market for the next 18 to 24 months, right? So
What are you doing different right now? That's a great point. And it's sad to say that, but people thought the market was at a high 4 years ago, then it was at a high 3 years ago, then they thought it was a high 2 years ago, then last year, and now everyone's like, oh, I got to stop. We're going through recession. But you just told me for the last 4 years you're waiting for this correction. What do you see happening, and how are you adjusting your business model and your business plans going forward?
So again, it's so much more important to be cautious, right? And so I have really kind of circled back the wagons and said, okay, I'm going to double down on education, and I'm going to double down on networking and meeting people, and then staying within the partnerships that I know, like, and trust to bring into deals. Because honestly, like, I trust their underwriting. You can make the numbers look as good as you want. I mean, it's a quick stroke of the pencil, and all of a sudden you're getting $100 more per unit, which is unrealistic, right? I mean, again, you were in real estate and I was in real estate in 2008. When rent concessions weren't just something, there was a line item on underwriting where you put a zero in it because you never had to do it, right? We were giving, in 2009, 2-month rent concessions on $3,300 units in the East Village. So that's $6,000 off your, the bottom line right there. But we were keeping that, that $3,300 on the rent roll for the loan, to Wells Fargo, because we needed to show the rent roll was what it was. But the reality was something else. So, it's important to slow down, right? We We're all drinking the multifamily Kool-Aid, I like to call it. I'm channeling my inner Jake here. I'm going to get real. like, but it's like we got to slow down, right? And take this time, especially if you're just starting in the space, to get the education and make yourself valuable. We want to get into a deal so bad. I think we're all guilty of this, that we don't understand the numbers well, and we don't understand the property, and we don't really know our partners. And I speak from personal experience. Go through the education, ask your coaches questions. If you don't have a coach, get a coach. Get to know people and have real conversations. I mean, we're all being so polite because nobody wants to say anything or have an opinion, that the boat is heavily off course and nobody's realizing, right? Do your due diligence. And I can't say that enough, because it's strong what I'm saying, but I've already either had it happen to me or have heard from personal experiences. I'm in a lot of accountability pods and things are starting to happen, and there's starting to be a shift. And it's important to have the discussions early on, and again, circle back, figure out how you're going to do it, and and reevaluate your strategy going forward. It's going to be like an operations year, right?
Jake and Gino's Multifamily Mastery 6 is coming to the Gaylord Palms in Orlando, Florida this October 14th and 15th. Join Jake and Gino as they welcome special guests like Chris Voss, Luke Wren, David Green, and many more. Discover Jake and Gino's 3-step framework for real estate success, enabling students to accumulate $4 billion in assets. MM6 is the multifamily event of 2023 that you do not want to miss. Go to jakeandgino.com/MM6 to reserve your tickets today.
What would your life or business look like if you hadn't joined Jake and Gino 2 years ago, as far as from the multifamily space? Would you be in multifamily right now? Would you be in deals right now? Would you even be considering multifamily right now?
I'd like to think I would, but I don't know that I'd already be in deals. I don't know that I'd already feel comfortable. I was looking at other programs for joining Jake and Gino, and I don't know that they had the same approach. And that's why I'm really happy, to have found you. And I love your family approach. I love that your kids are at the events. You know what I mean? You're all in. And I think that's made a world of difference in my confidence in investing. Even just the people that are in the group, I feel like you actually select them. It's not just like, okay, they have the paycheck, just let them in. You know what I mean? It's like kids passing from, one grade to the next in school. Well, just let them pass. This is not my problem, right? No, you guys are you're picking people. I haven't come across anybody who was, not just an up and up person and willing to go the extra mile to be in this business. So I'd like to think I would be in it, but maybe puttering through a different way.
You know what's important, Monica, for me to share this with everybody? If you had waited, let's say you had waited 18 months and said, I'm going to wait till things slow down. You may not even know they're slowing down, but let's say you did. You would have wasted 18 months and started from ground zero now in a completely different economy, completely different mood, completely different sentiment. And not that it's a good or bad thing, but you would have forgotten 18 months. So that's why I always challenge people. If you're waiting for the right time, there never is the right time. It's only the right time when you figure out yourself saying, I need to do something different, or I want to do something different, or I want to make a decision today. And that's what's empowering, making the decision today to do it, not to wait and say, I'm going to start today. It's going to be a longer journey. And if I promise 18 months from now, I'm going to look back, as Dr. Benjamin Hardy says, the gap and the gain. You'll have such a gain because you look back 18 months ago, you weren't even in any deals. You didn't know what cap rates were. You didn't have a team built out. You had your properties in South Florida that you didn't flip over. You had a lot of naysayers in the family. Now, 18 months later, people want to invest with you, with the family. You've sold it. You've capitalized. You've crystallized that equity. So I'm just challenging everybody out there to say, hey, I'm going to wait. The economy doesn't wait. Interest rates don't wait. Nothing waits for you. The only thing that's going to wait, it's when I reflect back on my time as well, I started in 2010, 2011 in investing in multifamily seriously. And that was not a good time to start either, because that was the recession, 1% GDP. Nobody was lending money. It was hard to raise capital. There were deals out there, but nobody was doing deals. So don't look at what's going on in the current state. I think you need to look at what's going on in the current state of what's going on in your life and how this business will be able to change your life. Now, last question before we sign off, because this is important. You had mentioned about families, about kids, about women. Let's discuss that a little bit, why you're so passionate about this and how we as parents really are the stewards, financial stewards of our families and of our children, and why we really should take control of teaching our kids these skills that possibly we weren't taught.
Well, that's a really big deal for me. It's honestly like I hadn't realized how much I didn't know. And again, I don't know if it had to do with, being from an immigrant family. There was fear. We were in a country that didn't speak the language. And so we weren't taught some of the things, even just something as simple as goal setting. And I honestly kind of remember going through a lot of schooling. There was all the way through college and post grad stuff. And I didn't really have anybody sit down and tell me how to set goals, right? And how to understand finances. I mean, even now, I think the home economics courses of yesteryear are gone, right? So they don't even know how to balance a checkbook. And so I think we need to go back a little bit and realize what some important principles are that are not getting taught in schools, right? So we've had this conversation before where, I'm sure, Macbeth is valuable, but I'd rather hear, and I make my kids listen to like the Jim Rohn talks, right? Or podcasts in the car. And they're like, oh, on a podcast again, Mom. But I put it on and they listen. Oh my gosh, Gino, they listen. And some of them, they know the theme song and they say it out and they listen to what's being taught there. And it's important, and it's important for kids and for women, because I've also had quite a few conversations with women who are, well, my husband handles that. That's kind of the response to it. And then years later, they're divorced and they don't know what they have or what they don't have. And, or, their spouses have passed. I mean, I'm already getting into that age where those are things that are more and more commonplace. And so we need to teach those things earlier on, and we need to bring that to the female community as something that's okay as well. And I'm not a big rah women are great. I mean, maybe I'm inspired this week by the Women's Day thing, but I just think it's important for people to not have that opinion, or to really focus on the kids and teach them from a young age the difference of hard work, right? And where that will take you, just like you do with your kids.
One thing that I'm doing with my children. My daughter's one of my daughters is 14 years old. She's starting to work at gymnastics. So she started in early February, and she's getting her paychecks. But the paychecks are directly deposited into her checking account, so she doesn't even see the pay stub. So when I told her, you're getting a paycheck, but they're taking out taxes, she lost her mind. She's like, I'm going to go poor. Kids don't even understand taxes. They have to understand the taxes. I'm actually balancing her bank account every 2 weeks. I've got her a little notebook where she's writing down what the amounts are. I actually have interest payments going into Dad. What's interest? Let them teach them what interest is. Interest is the cost of money. The bank is giving you money to be using your money. And then every time, her money goes in the bank account, we put that in. So it's important to discuss it with them. And then also, as far as part of the family, the husband and wife, spouse, they should be having these discussions. We have level 10 meetings every week, me and my wife, for the last couple months. Jake forced me. That's important. Let's discuss what the budget is. Let's talk about where the money's going to. Let's talk about what we're saving. Let's talk about how we're investing our money. That's really, really important. A lack of communication is difficult and challenging. But if it doesn't start from teaching your children, and this is not something where, hey, you don't want to force them on it, but at a certain age, when they become teenagers, it's a much easier conversation when they're 7 or 8 years old. And as they start getting jobs, let your kids get jobs, because once they start working for money, they understand the value of money, and they can make a decision. Well, if I made $40 and I had to work 4 hours, that's $10 an hour. If this water bottle costs me $20, I have to work 2 hours for this water bottle. Is it worth it? Working 2 hours for this water bottle? Having those connections with money is so important for children to understand the value of money. And I think I agree with you 100%. If we can teach our children that they're more financially intelligent, it'll just help the economy and the world as a whole. And we won't have these ups and downs and these swings and these stupid financial decisions about money. So.
Absolutely. I have a really funny anecdote actually from a cousin of mine who really instilled this in her kids from early on. I mean, her son was out at college at William and Mary, and she still kept him on a budget. I mean, the family was doing well enough, but she said, okay, I pay for room and board. I'm giving you $40 a week, for you to go out and have a beer with your friends or whatever you want to do. And so, she would deposit that money and he would take it out. And so she started to notice that he at one point stopped going to the Bank of America ATM down the road and started taking it out from the from the ATM at the college, right, at $5 a piece, because we all know what those convenience ATM fees are, right? So the next time she deposited, she deposited $25 that week. So he was like, "Ma, you deposited only 25 this week. Did you make a mistake?" And she's like, "No, you already spent the other 15." So he was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, you it was $5 for this. 3 times you did $5. That's $15. So I just took it off. That was your the expense, your convenience fee for going to the ATM at school." He was like, "Oh, Mom." And she was like, "That's life. You got to learn. You know what? You got to go down the road and not pay anything to get your money. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay for the money," right? So it's just
Monica, that's so important, though. Is that so? Because we
yeah.
don't teach our children that. We expect our kids to know this stuff, and that's the sin of what we're committing. Like we were never taught this stuff. We have to learn that, and it's something where even teaching kids to set the table, to clear the table, to make their beds, to clean up the house, or do whatever. They're not born with these skills. If we're not teaching them those skills, then they're not going to be able to take care of themselves. And the same thing with money. If we're not teaching children money and all it's about credit cards and plastic and running it and not actually seeing it, that's why it's important when she gets paid. I want her to see that money going in the bank, but it's just numbers. It's just digits between PayPal and Venmo and Zelle. We don't even see the money anymore. So it's almost as if it's in the atmosphere, wherever you want, in the cloud, wherever. But if you are not physically able to touch it and to understand and describe it, it's really, really challenging for kids. So for all the parents out there, don't just assume things. We need to teach our children a lot of these skills. Could you imagine $5 every time for an ATM charge? That's 15 out of 40. That's a significant amount of money that's completely wasted. And that one tip will probably save him thousands of dollars over the course of his life, if you think about it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I think again, it's something that we're not teaching them, and that we need to. It's not popular either, Gino, just to make your kids like make their bed or set the table. I even have friends like, "Oh, you make them do that," and I'm like, "Yeah." And I see their friends come over here, and they'll have something to eat, and my kids will clear their plate, and the kids are just off, running, and I'm like, "Oh, okay," and you realize like it's not, it's easier to just plug them in front of an iPad, or it's easier to just not have these conversations. It's not
yes.
popular parenting to have to do that. And, I'm often like, "Oh, I hate you and you're the worst," or whatever. It's like, yes, but I'm sure, just like my mother said to me, like 20 years down the road, you'll appreciate me, or your wife will, or your husband will, right? And you'll be standing on your own 2 feet.
People will say, "Hey, Monica, you got great kids." Well, the kids aren't born great; they're made great, and they have role models. And it's the same thing what we're doing here. Talk about education and multifamily. You try to pick the role models that you're trying to aspire to. So if you're trying to teach your kids basic financial intelligence, you have to become financially intelligent and financially savvy. What is the future for you in multifamily? What are you looking to do as far as multifamily?
Well, I think again, after all this, I've kind of decided that I want to just go into some joint venture partnerships, like just like you did with Gino, like find a core group
Mm-hmm.
and really hone in on, a market or two, and just be there and deep dive there. I mean, I like the capital raising side, and I would do that for some, for 1 or 2 other groups, which I'm already involved with. But for my own personal, long-term, generational wealth, and sort of, I'm following your plan. I mean, I'm going to find, core partners, and just make it happen, and keep
And
it
what's
in
great
the
about it
family.
is you're doing both, right? You can have the ability to learn both strategies. Why not employ both? Where can the listeners get a hold of you?
You can find me on all socials. So it's usually at Monica Lorenzo, and I'm also Monica at capterracapital.com is where you can find me. And I'm pretty much on
Email
LinkedIn.
address.
Yeah,
You have an
that's
email
Monica.
address?
Monica, Monica at Capterra, Capterra, capital.com.
Thank
So
you. I didn't hear that. It went by so quick. I'm like, I got to get
I
her to
talk
say that
really
again.
fast, actually, so it was not you.
It's funny because there's a lot of people that want to get into real estate and they make all the excuses. Oh, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the experience. Well, Monica didn't have the experience in multifamily. She didn't live in the country. She's got children. She doesn't have the time, and she still found the time to do it. And for me, starting 18 months ago, it was very challenging because the market was elevated. There's no deals out there. Everyone's scrambling for deals. And yet she started and she planted her flag and she decided, I need to do this for the family. I want to do it long term. And how do I figure it out? And I think that's the takeaway from me is don't worry about all the stars aligning. Don't worry about all those lights turning red to turning green. It's never going to happen. Things aren't going to line up. You just need to figure out what you want to do with your life and the passion that you have, and how this vehicle or any vehicle will help you become, I guess, what we're trying to accomplish is that time freedom and that financial freedom. That's what we're trying to accomplish with these vehicles, but also getting good at something and being able to leave legacy. And whether it's generational wealth or it's legacy skills that we're teaching our kids, we can teach it through this vehicle. So I just want to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And give me that email address again one more time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not easy. I should have rethought that, but it's Monica at capterracapital.com. So, and it was great. Thank you so much for having me.
All you guys out there. Oh, my pleasure. Reach out to Monica. If you have any questions, if you're struggling, you're saying, hey, it's not my market, reach out, ask her, and it'll be worth your time. So, Monica, I will see you in the U.S. in the next couple months. So,
yeah, see you in Denver.
Yes, sounds great. Thanks, everybody.